Welcome and thank you for joining 10 to 2 for our webinar on how to create a winning CV. As experts in flexible and part-time recruitment and consulting, we do have a wealth of experience in this area, 18 years and counting, and we would like to share some of this with you now. It's great to have so many of you with us for this important session, and we do hope that you can take away some useful tips to help you with your career search. I'm Jane O'Gorman, Director of 10 to 2 and your co-host for this session. And joining me is my very lovely co-director, Jo, who will be leading the presentation brilliantly. We'll have around 30 minutes for the presentation here or there, hopefully for some time for questions at the end, which I will keep an eye out for any questions you may have over the course of the session. So please do pop those in the chat below. There is a lot to cover, however, I will say that. So if we do not get a chance to cover questions, please do not worry, because we will follow up later with an FAQ. There's no need to write too much down, as we will also follow up with some useful information for you, including a CV template and a link to the webinar so that you can watch that at your leisure. So without further ado, I would like to hand you over to our lovely Jo to kickstart the presentation. Jo, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jane, and thank you for joining. There's still a few people saying that you can't hear anything. A couple of other people have said that they've needed to join on audio, so I don't know if you want to log back out and log back in again and join on audio, but the majority of people can hear, so I don't think that there is a problem with the broadcast. And people who've raised their hands, I'm not sure if you've got a question, but if you have, could you please write it in the webinar chat, and Jane will either come back to you separately on a message, we'll address it during the presentation, or we can come back to you in the FAQ. So I'm just waiting to see. Oh, okay. People are just saying they can hear. Okay, that's fantastic.
Okay, so I'm pleased. That's good.
Wonderful stuff. Okay, so thank you for all of the housekeeping stuff there, Jane. We have got quite a lot of content to get through this evening. So I am going to whiz through and hopefully cover it all. But as Jane said, if you do have questions, pop them in the chat box. We will try and get to them. If we can't, you can always get in touch with us directly as well. So any of the team at 10 to 2 can help. You can contact us via the website. Our emails will be at the end. Or you will have all had emails from our lovely Ruth, and you can fill her inbox up as well.
Plenty of channels, plenty of options.
So I'm going to try and share, normally a little bit more organised than this, so apologies that I'm not quite ready for you all. Bear with me. Oh, it's not going on to slideshow, Jane. Why is that not going on to slideshow?
Good question.
Here we go.
Okay,
right. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Go.
Okay, so this is what we are going to cover today. I'm not sure why you can see black screen, but anyway, hopefully everyone can see this okay. So first of all, why a CV? Where to start? Often being faced with a blank sheet of paper is the scariest thing in the world. Some basics, your main components, what to avoid, and a summary. So why a CV? Why, after all of this time, with all of this technology, do we still rely on this document that's been around forever and a day? So CVs are the main kind of currency in your recruitment process, or in a recruitment process. They're used to shortlist people for an interview primarily. They are still the primary currency. They are still the main way of communicating your skills, your experience, your education, your qualifications to a prospective employer. They are effectively a well-presented selling document. So any of you out there in marketing or business development, start thinking about your CV as your selling document. It is how you're presenting yourself before you get a chance to present yourself. It's a script for talking about your career. So as well as being able to communicate to the employer, it's a very useful document for you yourself. You wouldn't give a presentation without having some notes, she says, not being able to see her notes this evening. So when you go into that interview, maybe take a copy of your own CV and, you've got it as a script, you've got it as something to refer back to. It's a document that can be tailored for the role that you're seeking. I'm going to use that word a lot this evening. So if you go to sleep tonight dreaming of tailoring, it's because I will say the word tailored over and over and over again. It is the most important thing that you can take away from our conversation tonight, is to make sure for every application you're making, you are tailoring your CV to that application. We'll talk about it more later. And this is saying the same thing with different words. It allows you to highlight your experience relevant to that role. So where do we start? Everybody knows that being faced with a blank sheet of paper is the scariest thing in the world. We're very, very lucky to have the technology that we have. So we don't need a blank sheet of paper anymore. And we'll come on to how technology can help a little while later. But before you've even got your blank sheet of paper, you need to get in the right mindset. You need to be in a positive, productive mindset. You need some time alone. You need a quiet work environment. You need to treat creating your CV as you would treat any important work project. It's not something that you can do whilst looking after little Johnny and watching the telly and, 5 other things at once. So put yourself in the right mindset, first of all. So the right circumstances, the right mindset, and that mindset has to be a positive one. You do not want to write your CV when you're feeling down about yourself, or if, you've had a terrible day at work and you just angry and want to get a new job and you want to write your CV. Make sure you're in a positive and proactive frame of mind. Consider your audience. Now, this is harder than it sounds. You don't know who your audience is going to be necessarily. You don't know whether it's going to be the hiring manager, whether it's going to be some AI bot, whether it's going to be an HR assistant. But you will know that they are looking for the person who can do the job that they've advertised. And this is where that tailoring word comes in. So you will know from reading the job description that they're looking for someone with certain qualifications. They're looking for someone with certain skills and experience. So make sure as best you can, without lying, that those things are replicated on your CV. It's once you start to read job specs, you'll start to be able to identify what words and phrases from those job specs are really, really key for them. And you can make sure that those words and phrases appear on your CV. Feels like plagiarism, but it's actually the easiest way to make sure that you end up on that yes pile. Be clear on your work goal. So make sure when you're writing your CV, you're very clear about what it is that you're hoping that CV is going to achieve for you. I know that sounds obvious. It's going to get you a job, but what job is it that you want? What level of role do you want? What industry do you want? Make sure you're really thinking about, and again, it goes hand in hand with considering your audience. Make sure you're really thinking about what it is that document is there to achieve and what it needs to contain to be able to achieve that goal. So again, you're tailoring your document for the job that you want. And the fourth thing that we always encourage people to do is create a basic outline. So this is where I put tailoring to a side. You don't want to have to rewrite your CV every time you apply for a role. We don't want you doing that. So you need a master copy. You need a kind of master document. So make sure you're creating that in the first place. So you've got your basic outline, you've got all of your key kind of experiences, and then you can swap in and swap out the various bullet points and additional bits and pieces as required. So some basics when you're thinking about your CV. Contact details. Sounds obvious. You would be amazed how many times a really important contact detail might be missing from a CV. Now, you don't have to put your full address. You don't need to put your inside leg measurement and your date of birth and all of those things. But you do need to make sure your email address, your phone number, and a rough location are on there. So we normally find the town that you're in is the best thing to give as a location. If you've got an up-to-date LinkedIn, make sure your LinkedIn profile is on there as well. If you don't use LinkedIn, or you've not got an up-to-date one, or you've got your privacy settings so tight that no one's ever going to be able to find you, don't put your LinkedIn profile on there, because it's just going to annoy people trying to find you, or it's going to give a bad impression if it's not an up-to-date profile. So really your email address, contact phone number, and rough location, so a town. Just talk about LinkedIn. Format, font and bullets. It's very tempting when you've got your CV to just keep adding to that CV, just keep putting in the most recent job, putting in the most recent qualification. It's quite obvious when people do that, because often they will change the font to whatever font they fancy using on that day. And there will be a mismatch of fonts throughout the CV. Uniform and sort of singularity is really important with your CV. As we said, it is a selling document. You know, if you're in business development, you wouldn't put together a bid proposal and have different fonts all over the place and different styles of bullet points and, you know, formatting everywhere. Make sure you really think about how you're presenting your document, because it gives a clue to the employer about how much pride you take in your work, about your skills in Word, if you've put it in Word, for example. Clear font that's easily legible, a reasonable size, a nice format, so nice, easy to read, not too squashed in. Bullet points are your friends, so try and avoid massive chunks of text. Try and avoid huge paragraphs and long lingering sentences about the projects that you've worked on. Make sure you're, you know, to the point, nicely laid out and relevant. Length. Now, I'm not a fan of the it has to be 2 pages rule. I think that the relevance of your CV is much more important than the length of your CV. But there are some facts out there, in that there are often a huge number of candidates for every role advertised. And the statistics say that an employer spends around 8 seconds on first look at your CV. So whatever the length of your CV, that 8 seconds is going to be mostly spent on the first page. So you need to make sure that the real relevant core information is there on the first page for the employer to see. That's not to say that there can't be more detailed information and relevant information on your subsequent pages, but regardless of the length of your CV, that first page is where you really, really make your first impression. If you have a career that spans many, many years, you might want to think about only including the last 15, for example, and then putting a general header, which gives a flavour for any past experience beyond that time. However, again, your relevant experience might be from earlier on in your career, so that rule isn't always the right rule to follow. You have to make sure, regardless of the length, that your CV is relevant. Just said that. Photo or not? I don't think that photos are necessary on CVs. Some people like to put them on there. The majority of the time, if you're going through an agency, your photo will be removed. Obviously, we live in a world where there are certain protections against discrimination. However, putting a photo on your CV inadvertently opens you up to more discrimination than not having one on your CV. If you're going to put one on your CV, please make sure it is a professional headshot, and not a photo of you on holiday or, you know, at the pub. So if you're going to use a photo, please make sure, again, it's relevant for your application. So keep your CV as easy to read as possible. That way you'll maximize your chances of getting noticed. It can play on your mind that to get noticed, you want a bright color, or maybe you want a fancy font. Unless you're a graphic designer, or unless there is a reason that somebody would want to see your creativity in that way, please stick to a nice legible font, and just black text is fine. So the main components of your CV, and we'll go through each of these. Profile, key skills, career history, education, and other information in that order. Your profile, your pen profile is the top couple of sentences or paragraph on your CV, and it's a chance to introduce yourself. Most of the time, you'll have the opportunity to submit a cover letter, and we would always advise doing so. However, sometimes your pen profile can be a pseudo cover letter. You know, it can perform the same job as a cover letter. It's an opportunity for you to use words about your core competencies, about the style of work, about maybe what it is that you're looking for. Again, it's a chance for you to tailor to that job description. So if they are looking for a project manager, you can say, I am a highly skilled project manager in your pen profile. Tick, tick, tick on the tailoring. Key skills. Key skills is something that we strongly encourage candidates to use on their CV. It can be in the form of a text box, it can be bullet points, it can be a list. However you feel most comfortable demonstrating, this is an amazing opportunity for you to highlight front and center on your CV what your key skills are. And the best way to be able to get on that yes pile is to make sure that those key skills are on the job description as well, so that you are mirroring that job description. So you're really tailoring your CV for that specific application. Those key skills could be anything from the fact that you're ACCA qualified through to you have exceptional PowerPoint skills, you're highly organized, anything and everything that would fall under the bracket of a skill can be noted in that key skills box. Your career history, this makes up the majority of your CV. And this is where you're going to really be able to pull out your skills, experience, job titles, all of those sorts of things, again, to tailor in reference to your application. This section is incredibly important to make sure that you're demonstrating not just your job titles, but also the industries that you've worked in, if that's relevant, the amount of time that you've spent in roles, so on and so forth. And we could do an entire session just on your career history and how to display and demonstrate that. The really key things to think about are bullet pointing the highlights of each of the roles. You're not just rewriting the job descriptions of the roles that you've had in the past. You're talking about what you have done in those roles. So the impact that you have had to the business in the time that you've been in that position. Your dates of employment are important. There's all sorts of ums and ahs about whether you should put dates on your CV or not, but your dates of employment are important. They will demonstrate your longevity if you've stayed there a long time. They will demonstrate your progression if you've had promotions in the time that you've been with an organisation, and they will remove question marks from the mind of the employer. We will come on to a little bit about gaps in employment and so on a bit later on, because I know that some of you will have questions about that. Education. Unless for some reason your education is particularly relevant to your application. So if they're looking for a biochemist and you have a degree in biochemistry, your education goes below your career history. As I said, the only exception to that is if it's something really, really relevant to the job that you're applying for, and then you might put it further up or above your career history. Don't worry about putting each grade for every subject you've ever done. Stick with your highest level of education and put the most information about that. Feel free to make reference to subsequent qualifications that you might have received, but really focus on your highest level of education. Other information. Some people love the other information or hobbies and interests section. Some people don't put one at all. I always think it's quite a nice idea to put a sentence in about you because it gives a more rounded view of who you are. It also gives you an opportunity to link your personal interests to the role. If you're changing career or if you're moving sector, it's quite a nice place to be able to put something about yourself that links you to that new career or to that new sector. I'm trying to think of a good example, but I worked in the music industry, for example. So a lot of people wouldn't necessarily have had career experience within that industry, but they might have had a personal passion for that, or they might have DJ'd, or they might have managed a band, and that might go in that section. The other thing that it does is allows for the employer to have an icebreaker. You know, if you've put in there that you windsurf or something at the weekends, you know, then they might be able to ask you a question about that. And it's something that you can go in and talk about. You also never know who's going to be reading your CV. And if you've got something in common, brilliant way to start the interview by having a chat about what you might have in common. If your hobbies and interests are hanging out with your friends and going to the cinema, might not be as informative about you, and you might not want to include that in your hobbies and interests. It's entirely up to you. So I think we've just gone through all of these. So again, this is a real opportunity for you to sell yourself. Now, I know a lot of us find it really, really hard to big ourselves up and to sell ourselves. And this is one of the reasons why it's really important to be in the right frame of mind when you write your CV. If you find it incredibly difficult, and if you really get stuck when you are bigging yourself up onto that piece of paper, speak to an old colleague. You know, ask them about what it was that you did that was great within that business, or speak to a friend, ask an old boss, go back through your review paperwork with your last employee, because with your last employer, because that will have been your chance to sell yourself while you were working for them. So you will have pulled out the best project that you worked on that year and written some notes about that, or you will have talked about the best client that you landed that year. So don't feel as though you have to do this in isolation. You know, there are documents that you can go to, there are people that you can go to who are going to be able to help you sell yourself. Apologies, I've jumped ahead in my talking and not referred to the slides. I think that we've talked about this. Reordering to highlight the most relevant. Again, that's part of your tailoring process. So on your key skills, if in the essentials section of your person spec on the job spec, they're asking for A, B, and C, you make sure that A, B, and C are right at the top of your skills box. And then in the desirable section, they're asking for D, E, and F. You follow that with D, E, and F. All of a sudden, the hiring manager is looking at your skills box and saying, my goodness me, this person is my job description. I have to meet them. Making sure that the software that you've used is mentioned on your CV is really important as well, especially if that software is being specifically asked for in the job spec. Being as specific as you can. So, you know, what version of Sage you've used. I'm not going to go into Java and all of that because it blows my mind. We've talked about career history. So just to run over that again, focusing on achievements. Avoid industry speak and acronyms, even if you're applying for a role within that same industry, because you just never know who it is who's going to be reading your CV. It could be somebody who's sitting in an HR department who's just started from a completely different industry. They're not going to know what those acronyms mean. So make sure that you're being really clear in your outline of your experiences and achievements. Use data to make sure that you're giving scale. You know, if you've had budgets, make sure that you specify what those budgets were. If you have had achievements, make sure that you're putting percentages or data against those achievements, and try and use action verbs. So rather than you were responsible for, use those doing words. Make sure that everybody knows that you were active and involved and doing. So this is a great example of our candidates here, career history. She was marketing manager at company X. Now, what she's done brilliantly here is given a brief overview of what company X do and who they are and what size they are as well. This really helps an employer picture you within that role, you know, understand the size of company that you're used to working for, understanding the turnover of company that you're used to working for. She's also given a reason for leaving. Again, negating any question marks from that CV. As you can see, she's been there for, what is that, 2 years, 3 years? They might think, oh, I wonder why she left after that time, especially if there was a career break afterwards. They're thinking, what happened? Did she get sacked and couldn't find another job? I don't know. Maybe she needs to go on the maybe pile. But no, she's written her reason for leaving there. So they immediately don't have that question mark because they're told. She's then given these lovely, nice, clear bullet points with some data in there. She's filled it with doing words. So she has managed, she has reviewed, she has improved. And it's shortened to the point. Education and training, as we said, start with the highest level of education, include your relevant training, include any letters after your name in your contact details, and any additional information. Make sure that it's brief, factual, interesting, and relevant. Now, check and double check. Again, this is where you reach out to your friends. Sometimes you can go completely snowblind looking at your own document. So please do use all the technology available, use that spell check, use somebody else's eyes to make sure you are checking and double checking. Errors on your CV are the fastest way to get your CV dismissed. Pitfalls to avoid. Please never lie. As tempting as it is to big yourself up that little bit too far, you'll end up tripping over yourself. It just isn't worth it. Make sure that you talk about, or you write down achievements that you're confident talking about. If you put something on your CV, there is a chance that you're going to get asked about it in the interview process. So make sure they are examples that you can talk about in depth, that you can really, really sign your name to, and that you're confident discussing. Beware of CV building packages. We will come on to talk about technology. I keep saying we will. Just make sure that you're not completely reliant on online building tools. They can be great. They can give you a really good starting point, or you can use them at the other end of the process to refine a document that you've already put together. Please don't rely on them entirely. As we've talked about, fancy fonts and formatting, keep it simple, keep it legible. Long acronyms, make sure that if the other person reading your CV isn't from your industry or doesn't do what you do, make sure it's obvious that they're going to understand what you do. Unexplained gaps. Now, I know that there's a lot of people who are members of 10 to 2 or probably joining this evening who are going to have had career breaks. Just make sure that they are explained. Try to make sure that if somebody is reading your CV, they are not left with any question marks. So any gaps in your employment history of more than, say, 2 or so months, just put a line in there to say what you were doing. There is nothing wrong with whatever you were doing. What there is wrong with is the employer putting you on the maybe or even the no pile just because there's an unanswered question. So if you were raising a family, put the dates and put that you were raising a family. If you travelled the world, you lucky sausage, then put the dates and put that you travelled the world. What an amazing thing to be able to talk about in an interview. If you were undertaking a qualification or whatever it was, there's a lot of people who are being made redundant and then taking a while to find a new role. This is not the hushed, don't talk about it subject that it might have felt like it once was. It's okay to have that on your CV. So make sure, Dane, you've raised your hand.
I did only briefly because I was just going to add to that, and we have had questions around that and around gaps. That very often some of the skill sets that may actually be in a JD could come from some of the experiences that we have and people may have during those career breaks or doing
Absolutely brilliant point.
volunteering. There are other experiences that can be very, very valuable and
Absolutely.
absolutely worth noting on your CV.
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely think that a lot of the candidates that we are lucky enough to speak to on a daily basis are really, really proud of the time that they've spent out of the workplace and are really proud of some of the achievements that they've made. And some of the best CVs have had clever little things put in there like CEO of my family, or, I'm not going to say office assistant to my family. But whatever it is, make sure there are no unexplained gaps. Make sure those gaps are explained. And as we've just talked about, anything else that raises a question mark. So if your friend reads through it and says, well, what about this? Then you know there's a question mark being raised. Yes, Jane.
Just giving you a heads up, we're at 30 past.
Oh, told you, there's a lot of content here.
There's a lot to
Relying
cover.
on
There is a
AI
lot to cover.
do
I'm
it
just
for
making sure
you.
we're conscious. Yeah, thank you.
So we have added a dedicated slide to the pros and cons of using AI because we always get a lot of questions about it. AI is brilliant. We love AI. We at Tend to are embracing AI as much as we possibly can. ChatGPT is our friend. However, there are some things that you need to be aware of when you're using this to put together your CV. First of all, decide what it is you want AI to help you with. Do you want AI to completely write your CV from scratch? Do you want AI to fine tune your CV? Do you want AI to help you with tailoring your CV? What is it that you want AI to help you with? Because that will give you a starting point and help you think about what tool is going to be best. Choose a tool that you're confident using. So if you've never used ChatGPT before, maybe don't use the first thing that you use it for as doing your CV. Maybe play around with it with something a little bit less important first. Similarly, there are other tools that aren't ChatGPT. We are not sponsored by ChatGPT. If there's another tool that you're more comfortable using, then maybe try using that instead. Ensure you've provided your tool with the right information. So AI is only as good as the information that we give it. So if you are feeding it a document which has errors on it for it to then perfect, it really can't perfect them because it's not sure what it's perfecting them to. So make sure you're giving it the right information to start off with. If you're putting links in there and asking it to tailor to specific job adverts, make sure that those links work. Otherwise, it's going to be tailoring it to something else. So make sure you feed it with the right information. Edit and amend, never rely on it without checking. We were talking amongst ourselves in the team about all of the funny little things that give away that a CV has been written by ChatGPT specifically. And there are little things that give it away. So it will embolden certain words. It will use odd dots and dashes in places that dots and dashes don't belong. It will speak in a very different tone and often use a lot of Americanisms. So make sure that you are editing and amending and thinking about the way that humans talk to each other and communicate with one another, and that is reflected in your CV. Which brings me to the final point: consider tone and style. Now, this is more so for cover letters because they obviously have more of a kind of personality and tone to them. Now, there are clever things that you can do in the settings of AI tools to make sure that it is speaking in a tone and a style of your making. But again, it's really important that you check, recheck, and amend, and make sure that you are putting some of your personality into the document as well, because ultimately it is selling you, and you are not just a product of your education and your work experience. You know, you are a human with a personality, and that needs to be conveyed one way or another through this document. So, as a summary, a good CV will be an easy read. It will be concise, comprehensive, descriptive, and personal, as we just talked about. It will be relevant to the role that you're applying for. So it will reflect sector and professional knowledge and show your transferability. It will leave no question marks. You'll have a complete chronology with clear rationale on your career journey. And it will get you moved to the yes pile. Hopefully, a great CV will get you on that yes pile, and it will be the beginning stages to your interview and assessment process. Any questions?
Okay. We've had quite a few questions. Some we've covered off during the course of the session. And as I mentioned, we will obviously come out with some FAQs after as well. There was quite a lot around volunteering, and you've covered some of that off, Joe, which has been really helpful, and certainly around career gaps and how whether that should be noted or not. And I feel that you've given a good account of ensuring that someone, an employer or prospective employer can see what your career journey has been like, and actually making sure there are no questions and no gaps that would come from that. The other thing, maybe just a very quick one, would be around cover letters. Should I always add a cover letter? Is one of a very common one that seems to be coming through.
So I think if you have the opportunity, then yes, you should definitely put a cover letter forward. If one is requested as part of the recruitment process, obviously, yes, you should
Yeah.
provide one. But if you have the opportunity to, um, I think it shows an additional level of interest in the role. It gives you a real opportunity to talk more openly outside of that CV framework about you and your relevance for the role. Um, and it gives you a chance to demonstrate a bit of personality as well. So
Mm.
in a CV letter, you can speak in slightly longer, more lingering sentences. You can put a bit more colour around your skills, your experience, what it is that you bring to the table.
Mm. And I think it can also be helpful if some of the experiences are not the most recent, then the
Absolutely.
cover letter is the perfect place to really bring through the depth of experience that you do have that's very relevant for that role.
Absolutely. We have a lot of candidates come to 10 to 2 who are interested in a career change. Um, and cover letters are the perfect vessel to talk about your transferable skills and to make sure that your prospective employer understands your transferability, and your keenness to move sector, because those things can't always be communicated in a CV.
Absolutely. I want to reassure everyone there's quite a few questions still coming through. We've had an incredible number of people joining us for this session, so we will do our very best to get round to those, and we will be coming out with some additional information after the webinar. But unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time here at the moment after a fantastic presentation. Um, Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you so much, Joe, for a great presentation with so much information that I hope everyone's found helpful. Um, if after today's webinar, you still feel that you need further help, please do get in touch with us, and you can find more information on our additional career support services on our website. So there are a range of services there that can also add additional support, from CV rewrite, career coaching, interview practice. Do have a look if there's anything that we can support with there. As I mentioned, we will follow up with a CV template, a summary on the questions, and a link to the webinar. So everything that Joe has brilliantly covered, you can then watch again at your leisure. And hopefully that will be very useful. Please do allow a couple of days for this to come through, though. But we always do also love your feedback. So please do get in touch if you've time. Leave us a Facebook, Google review. We're always very much appreciative. But I'm afraid that's it for now. And we do hope to see you on another 10 to 2 webinar soon. It's bye from me.
And it's bye from me. Thanks
Have a
so
good
much,
evening,
everyone.
everyone. Yeah, I know. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye now.